Hey, I'm back. So here we are, about halfway up the valley here, up from the bottom of the valley, I should say. So as you recall, we sent a transect up from the trail. We determined the starting point of that transect with a random number along a transect that ran along the trail in the valley bottom. And so now we've run this perpendicular transect up the side of the slope of the valley here, and we've gotten to the 30-meter mark, which happens to be this dead tree right here. So that's the 30-meter mark. 30 meters marks the center of the middle plot halfway up the hillside here. As you recall, there's one more plot 55 meters from the bottom of the valley, 55 meters up this way behind where you are, and then we've got one plot at 5 meters, 5.5 meters from the trail down in the bottom of the valley there. Okay, so we're on the middle plot here. I could have picked any one of these to demonstrate, but yeah. Now, once I've determined the center point of my plot, which again happens to be this dead tree, now I'm going to measure 5.64 meters outward, 5.64 meter radius out from the center to determine which trees are inside my plot. Okay, so I'm going to need to do that in 360 degrees around the center point. I'm not going to go ahead and do that for every single tree, but let's just say for the purposes of demonstration here, so I've already set the tape out 5.64 meters from the bottom of that tree. I'm going to rotate it around here. I want to see if this tree is inside or outside of the plot. This tree here, actually the tape hits this tree, so this tree is going to be inside the plot. And sometimes you get trees that are on the edge. You want to determine whether more than half of the tree is inside the plot or outside of the plot. So if half of the tree or more is inside the plot, then you're going to count it as being inside the plot. Okay, we can tell already without measuring that this little tree here is inside the plot. The big dead tree at the center of the plot is obviously in, and these two trees next to that big dead tree are obviously in the plot as well. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and start measuring these trees, and to do that I'm going to use a handy tool called a DBH tape, a very unassuming little tape measure. These are amazing actually, and they're really ingenious. I'm going to see if I can bring this closer. What you see here is a diameter measurement. So they've taken a linear like circumference measurement, and they have divided the units by 3.14 to create a diameter translation. Okay, so I don't even have to calculate diameter. All I have to do is put the tape around the tree like so, and this comes out to 5.3 centimeters diameter for this little tree. I want to identify the tree as well. It turns out it's a baby sugar maple tree, kind of hard to tell without leaves this time of year. And so on. I want to keep going around the plot and measuring any trees that are in the plot. Okay. This is a 5.8 centimeter diameter hemlock tree. Okay, gets a little harder on some of the bigger trees. There's this big dead tree. So that's a 46.8 centimeter dead white ash tree. Okay, it's important to note whether it's dead or alive, and we are counting dead trees for the purposes of this study because standing dead trees, aka snags, are really important for wildlife habitat, and in particular, northern spotted owls care how dense the standing trees are in their habitat. So whether it's dead or alive doesn't really matter. It's part of the density of this forest. Okay. Now it does turn out that dead trees are really important habitat for nest sites. So that is from the perspective of a spotted owl and many other bird species. Actually, that's another reason to note whether a tree is dead or alive. Okay, so I've got the species, I've got the diameter, I've got whether it's dead or alive. I'm going to do that for all the trees that fall within a 5.64 meter radius of that center point. It's a circular plot around the center point. Okay, why 5.64 centimeter radius? Well, that sounds like a very unusual number to pick, but you'll see when you start doing calculations with that radius that it scales up really well when we start talking about 1 hectare plots. Okay, so that'll become obvious when you start working on the lab. Sounds kind of like a random number right now, but it's really not, and there's a strategy to that. Now, next question that I just want to explain quickly: how do we know what's a tree and what's a shrub? Okay, and how do we know how tall does it have to be a tree? Okay, we're measuring all the woody plants in this 5.64 meter plot that are greater than 1.4 meters tall. So if your tree or shrub is less than 1.4 meters tall, you're not going to count it. Okay, you're not going to bother measuring it. Okay, and that's also important from the perspective of an owl. They probably don't care much about things that are less than 1.4 centimeters tall, although that could be important for their prey. But we have another way to measure the small stuff. Okay, and I'll come back to that in a second. Why 1.4 meters? Well, it turns out 1.4 meters, it's an arbitrary number that was selected by forest researchers a long time ago. But it's just something that's standardized now across really any study you can think of that is quantifying the structure of forests. 1.4 meters is defined as breast height. Okay, so that's important to remember. And for our purposes, you can approximate 1.4 meters. These trees are pretty cylindrical most of the way up, and whether you're measuring at 1.5, 1.6, or 1.2 probably is not going to influence your diameter measurement much one way or the other. Okay, so try to remember approximately where on you 1.4 meters is, and then you can walk up to the tree, hug it at that height, put your tape around it, and get the measurement really quickly. Okay. When you first start doing this, it could be helpful to measure 1.4 meters up the tree just to check yourself. All right, so that's how we measure the large trees and shrubs within the 5.64 meter radius circular plot. Okay. I should add one more thing, and that is shrubs often have many stems. And in some cases, trees do as well. If your stems branch below 1.4 meters, then you're going to end up counting all of the stems. Okay, and that's a convention in forestry. But what that means is you could end up, if you have a plot with a lot of shrubs or small trees, or trees that are that have multiple stems, you're going to be potentially counting hundreds, if not on very rare occasions, 1,000 stems in a small area. Okay, but that's, again, really important from the perspective of wildlife and the ability of wildlife to move through that habitat. Okay, and for the northern spotted owl, they really don't want a high density of stems. They want to be able to fly easily through the forest and not have to crash into things. All right, I'll come back with the small plot now.